thank you everyone for being here. I'm very, very excited to be in conversation with Paula and Bianca. And today we're sort of going to be exploring community and access and also culture. And just before we sort of like delve into that, I'm very interested, as I feel everyone, to know more about your beginnings. So how did you start? If you can all, each take a turn and tell us about the genesis.
So I feel like my journey, I always say to people, it's kind of a little bit boring because I was just really interested in, I guess, creating things and like designing and whatever formed the process. So like I think that's why I love fashion, because it's all about the research and having like different aspects of like not just doing one thing. And that's what developed on for me to do my actual own brand as well too. So I started off with my BA at Kingston, and that was like very much like a commercial like university, like a particular way of doing things. And then when I went to RCA, which Royal College of Art, it was very much like the possibilities were endless. And this is where I kind of like developed my menswear a lot more further, and I was really interested in tailoring. And then since then, I've been able to like develop my own brand. I'm kind of like skipping over like loads of steps here that I'll probably get into further details after. And yeah, I think that's it for the most part.
Okay, how about you, Paula?
I think my journey is more of a cliche because I grew up in South Spain, and my mother has a wedding dress atelier. So I grew up in an atelier of people just making clothes. So I've always been very connected to cloth making and the craft. And then I moved to London, where I studied BA, a master's at St. Martin's. So that kind of took me farther. I had more time to research, to dig into what was it that I wanted my aesthetics and my narrative to become. And it's been now 3 years that, again, a big chunk step that we have the brand. But that was really the beginning. It's very cliche because I just was born into.
And sort of what would you say is what inspired you to sort of like, for instance, focus on menswear from the get-go? Or was it from the get-go?
It wasn't, I wouldn't say it's from the get-go. It was kind of like I was doing women's wear and I just felt as though like, women's, so I would say I'm naturally more of a feminine woman, so I literally love clothes, but it was so much easier just to like be, I don't know, what I saw. And I thought with menswear there was a lot more room to like grow it and kind of like introduce like aspects of women's wear into menswear, but do it in the way that was quite like following the like standard rules of like how like a jacket closes a certain way and like how tailoring is done. I just thought it was really interesting, and there was a lot more things to learn on that part, and it felt as though I was like challenging myself a lot further. Of course, there was people that was suggested like, oh, maybe I should go into menswear, just because I was really interested in like menswear archival pieces, and also a lot of the images were inspired by the men in my family, and I was trying to like adapt it to women. And then moving forward, it just made sense to try it. At first, I was going to do like a unisex collection, but it was just really confusing for me. So it was kind of like learning the body of a man. It was something that became a huge journey to how like my designs have developed further. And it's interesting because like with like my MA, it was like 2 years long, so I didn't get like a longer period of time to kind of fully develop that aspect. So like It's kind of like every season that you see my work, it just gets better and better because I'm just really trying to I guess as an aspect I really like, and I'm trying to like make it better every season. So I kind of see it as like a practice in a way, which is nice because I think that kind of gives me a lot more longevity to like go further in how I develop my design process.
I love that you say that. Of course, we are here sort of surrounded by Reginald Sylvester II's work. I was very interested to know, just off the bat, who, if or more, he's an artist that you say that is sort of inspiring for you.
So at the moment, I'm looking quite heavily on Francis Bacon. So whether it's in the mix between like my actual culture or like I look at the idea of distortion, a lot of his like paintings like had included a lot of tailoring, or whether it was like traditional menswear clothing, and just looking exactly how the twists and the turns are that he created in his actual work, which I find very interesting. But then it also is the aspect of things being quite like solid coloured, so like trying to mix the very much traditional with something that is slightly twisted and also a fall outside of your head. So I thought, yeah.
So can you tell us what you said your heritage, what that is for anyone that might know?
So I'm Jamaican, so all my family from London as well too, so I kind of use like the mix of the two. But I feel like Jamaican culture in London is like quite like heavily, I don't know, I think it's something that I just can't get rid of, and I just love having that aspect, because I think it really pushes forward how I think. And what is, for me, I feel like I'm trying to make people understand what that world actually means. Like, it's kind of like becoming a modernist in the Jamaican culture, and that's something that doesn't exactly exist just yet, in my opinion. And how that actually moves further forward to like art, fashion, and basically innovation in design.
How about you? An artist that...
There are so many. I'll mention a few. So Francis Bacon, for sure. Again, I agree with you. The use of color is just incredible. So he's an artist I go back to very often. I'll probably mention some artists that we referenced in our previous collection. So Sophie Calle, the monochromatic diet. I was reading about a book that's called The Eyes of the Skin by Palasma. It referenced more architecture, but also visual arts. And he's talking about how good architecture should be, or art should be for the senses, not just for the eye. And just having gone through the pandemic and having spent so much time just on our phones, online, that really resonated with me. And I was like, how can we create clothes that evoke the senses, not just the eye? And so I did loads of research on that, and in the way we structure the collection, in the way we use the reference, the textures, colors, I really wanted to make it very palatable. And there's some excerpt in the book that he says that a good architecture, again, good, it's something that inspired senses, and you could almost sense or feel what something tastes like by looking at it. And so yes, Sophie Calle was one of the reference. Her monochromatic diet I found amazing. I love her sense of wit as well. And then again, on our last collection, we worked with an artist that's represented by Max, who's a good friend of ours, Coco Capitan, who shot the collection for us. So yes, it's visual arts is always very present, and yeah, it's always part of the research of the process.
I'm very interested. I was looking at one of Reginald's interviews, and he was talking about sort of the process of his image making and sort of when he's in the zone, and he sort of goes by instinct, right? It's sort of just, it's him and the canvas or the paper. What is sort of your process in terms of designing a collection?
Yeah, I would say it is quite like an instinct sort of way of working. A lot of it is like monitoring how people move in clothes, and like those like slight twists, and like shoulder seams is like something I'm massively obsessed with. Yeah, I think it is more observational. It's really weird because like sometimes I have to do the research backwards, because it's more inspired by like just playing around with mannequin and like creating those aspects, or like something I've done previously and just trying to perfect it into another way. Or this season at the moment, the collection came through, well, it's not out yet, but the collection came through like things I was making in the studio, and I just was like, it developed onto something else. Like 12s that went a bit wrong.
Right.
And like basically using mistakes, and that's what kind of forms like the new seasons and stuff like that.
Okay, I'm very intrigued. Like, you gave us a little bit of a preview here.
Yeah, a little verbal preview, yeah.
How about you, Paula? What's the process?
I think the process changes all the time. We have a very free approach. So sometimes it's literally a book that I'm reading or something that bothers me, and it really is a response to that. Sometimes, which is something I quite like to do, is to restrict myself. And maybe I look at an artist that sets a set of rules, and I'm like, how could we do that with our work? So it's like, okay, can we create a collection that has no fastenings? So there are no zips, there are no closures, there are no buttons. How could we go about it? And then that, I find that very inspiring when I have a set of restrictions and I kind of try to work toward those boundaries. So it's like, could we work with elasticated closures? So it really depends. That's what we're doing at the moment. I've said, okay, now there are no closures, no fastening, no buttons. Let's just produce a collection that is created with none of that.
That is also very, very exciting. And in terms of, okay, so we're in the studio now, we're research mode, and now we're sort of collaborating with other people. Like, what does collaboration mean for you? And then, because of course you collaborate with visual artists, musicians, etc., etc. So like, sort of, perhaps tell us about the recent collaboration, and also why collaboration is important.
So it's interesting because I feel like that's what kind of built a bit more of like my community and kind of helped the brand grow a bit more. So when I graduated, I did a film with Akinola Davis Jr. and that film like visualized what I was trying to say in my research. And it's interesting because like whenever I collaborate with someone, it's just me like going through like trying to explain the idea I have in my head and then like going away and creating a better, I guess, furthering the idea. Because I was speaking to someone on my team recently, and I was like, oh, there's actually people that do this in actual massive companies. They go away and find the visual images, whereas like me, I'm like explaining to them, trying to actually, or like creating smaller clips or something else to kind of bring that idea forward.
For us, it's actually funny because a few of the people we collaborate with are here in the room. That. Shout out to Aika Moshita and Jack Woolley. So we work in the video that we were talking about, this same collection that we were doing spring-summer 22, the one with the senses. We wanted to do this whole setup where you had this sensation that people could eat the collection, and so we created this. The table, the whole scenario was designed by us. It was directed by Joyce Nji, who is a Hong Kongese photographer and filmmaker based in London. And we worked with Jack Woolley, who is a ceramic artist now based in Mallorca, and we created a set of ceramics to that were carrying the food that Selika Dinga, who is a chef based in Paris, designed for the occasion. So yeah, Aika Moshita, we've been working, she's a stylist, also based in London. We've been working for many years. So for us, it really is very organic, and there's, I think, like you, a real sense of community and people we work with in the long term that help us build that narrative for the brand. And yeah, that's really important to me to like have that ongoing.
And then sort of, while we're in this sort of theme of community, how, of course, you involve the community by sort of collaborating with different artists and blah, blah, blah. How do you make your brand, sort of like keep the integrity of your brand? So, you know, of course, especially when you're in this industry, it's so easy for people to tell you what voice and direction you should go. So how do you sort of, what's your strategy for putting your foot down?
I guess having people that I've worked with from the beginning, like, I think I had a conversation with some I think I was just so confused of hearing so many voices of what I should be doing. And there was just like, I remember the person that you was like in terms of being like, I don't know, because I used to do a lot of like makeshift shoots. So like maybe like the first shoot I did, we basically like hammered some carpet to the wall and then used the sunlight because we couldn't, well, because I couldn't afford any like extra lights and stuff like that. But remembering like the beginning of like doing something out of creativity is what started the brand, and that started with my ideas, and that was something that was natural. So if that's what kind of built the brand, then I probably should stick to that.
I love it a lot.
And I think, yeah, for us it's same. It's people, creatives, artists that we have been working with for a long time. I mean, Coco Capitan shot our BA collection in 2014 or 15, like ages ago. So it's people that we've known for a very long time that, you know, understand the aesthetics, the brand, the message. And when new collaborators come in, it always is a very intuitive feeling when you know someone gets it and you can bounce ideas on and off. And it's funny because with some people I've been talking to for like 8 years about doing something together, and it hasn't happened yet, but it's sometimes conversations that are ongoing for years, and it is waiting for the right time.
It's almost like a durational piece. So
Yeah.
when the time is right, it sort of goes on. What I love about this show, Cuts, is sort of how it challenges the notion of the expected. So what should a canvas look like, right? And then something that both of your brands as well, you sort of, I feel like you're working towards this notion of legacy. And then I really want to know more about your vision and how do you create a collection that is collectible? Does that make sense? So that is not sort of just focusing on trends, but is forward thinking.
I like the idea of reselling. I think that, I think recently I saw a couple pieces on like Vestia or something like that or eBay, and I was like, oh, so fascinating. It's actually starting to get into the mix of it being like something that people want to come back to. So I think that's when I do have my collections in mind, I do think about it not being too trendy and to be something that people would want to wear years to come, and it to just like naturally flow into someone's wardrobe and not be seasonal.
Yes, same, to be honest. And also this idea of quality is very important to us. Again, going back to the craft, I spend all my time in the factories because we tend to create very complex products that not many people want to produce. And I really like to be part of that process, to meet the artists, the artisans that are making them, because when you are part of it, you can kind of dig in. When I go to the knitwear factory, I'm like, how about you do that in another thread? Could you pull it more? Can we change the tension? And I think being part of that process makes pieces that are very special, of high quality. That's what we go for, at least. And yeah, a sense of timelessness.
What would you say? This is the moment of. What would you say is the key for a successful collaboration? So you spoke about how most of the people that you collaborate with are people that you've known for their friends, they're your community. So how do you sort of, because you're very involved in your brand in all the stages, so how do you sort of ease the reins?
I think for me, it's just basically getting people to understand the vision and not make it like, because now it's like going into a brand that needs to have like a continuous aesthetic to what the brand is. Like when it's not like much of a larger brand, people are a bit more focused on, like, an artist will come in and they'll work towards the brand brief to suit that brand. So it's just making sure they're suiting my brand is something that I've like noticed. And it's interesting because now like that the brand's growing, there's some people that I really like their work and I want to work with. So it's having the initial conversation of whether it actually gels well, and whether they can produce something unique for me.
I think it's also that kind of sweet balance of obviously sticking to the brand aesthetics, but allowing whoever comes from the outside to bring their input and understanding.
Right.
So I would say the key is just loads of conversations. Like I said, it's sometimes years in the go. I think what's funny about this industry is that it's so timed by the schedule that we have, 6 months would become 1 week to design a collection. So it gets a bit tricky. That's why sometimes there's a very long process, even years, until a collaboration really comes to fruition, because, time is tight.
I found out that while you were at university, you sort of collaborated with different visual artists. How does that, what were your experience was when you you made a film? I can't remember the artist's name actually, but it was while you were still at university, you collaborated with visual artists. You must have collaborated with loads.
Yeah, that's.
Which one was it? But just pick one visual artist that you collaborated with and tell us about the experience and sort of what it was that you created. I mean, spoiler alert.
Is it me?
Either.
Okay, you go.
Oh. I was like, oh, I can't remember now. It's so long ago.
Going back to the archives.
I think, I don't know, I feel like having the aspects of art in my work, it contextualizes the thought process of like my research a bit more. And I think it just makes it fun for me. I think that's why I wanted to kind of like have the idea of collaboration continuously involved. And because I don't know, it can like, because now it's growing into a proper business, it's like really business focused. So like having aspects of like doing something creative with people that are more individuals, it keeps the excitement of what will be for the next season. Yeah.
Yeah, and also people that come with a very different set of skills, very different point of views. I think it really enriches the vision, the aesthetics, and it's something I've been doing since I was, at uni. Research has always been key to me. I've spent hours in the library. I'm a bit of a geek, so.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm really interested about what it is that you're working on right now. That you can tell us. I really want to know.
So I'm working on, well, at the moment I'm kind of like building out what I wanted the brand to become. So like more like a design world. So I made a chair like a year ago and it's like coming out soon. And I'm also making like a series of like home objects in like a specific like fabrication, which is exciting. I also like directed like my own film for like the brand. It came out in January, but at the time like it was my first show, so it kind of got a little bit overshadowed. But I'm working on a film for the collaboration as well. So like learning that aspect of things. And then of course like the collection as well too. So the new collection. And then after that, I think there's no other collaborations because it's a little bit much. But
we're very on theme right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that the main idea for the brand is just to kind of like build more of a world around it, and it not to just exist as one thing.
I love that. Hyphenated.
Yeah, for us, we're working in spring, summer 23.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy. Which will show in September. And then we've got an installation coming to Maxfield in LA, and just the usual. We always have an ongoing collaboration with like Jack for the ceramics, which we've created this set of tableware that we keep adding on. And I also, as you said, I think it's nice to have some continuation in the products that you do and some carryovers, so it helps to build the brand identity and the brand visuals. So that's kind of what we're, spring summer 23 installations.
How sort of in the art world, it's sort of always criticized about this issue of accessibility, and fashion, sort of the fashion industry is the same. So I feel like because you involve community at the center of your brand and sort of broadening who gets to access these pieces, what other ways are you thinking in terms of sort of making your work more accessible?
I guess before the pandemic, it was more about like creating certain like activations where it was events, I guess collaborating with friends, like putting on certain shows. So I did one for like Black History Month where I invited like a series of like artists that are friends, and then put a show together. And then more so now, because things are a bit more digital, it's just like people interested in the research of the brand or interested in like the concept of the brand is how I saw about involving people who weren't necessarily, I guess, wanting to buy the clothes, but just like the aspects of what the brand supports. But I think more things will come further like down the line and it'll develop even more, but it's all down to time.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's something that's been bothering me since we started the brand, this idea of accessibility. And also in the case of fashion, I think for us, there's so much research that goes into one collection. Literally, sometimes I spend, months, and it's all thrown into a catwalk show that lasts 4 minutes. So I think our first go at that was in 2018 when I was like, okay, how can we create something that is not as perishable, something that will last, that people can go back to, and that is open to everyone. So we decided to do, now looking back, it was a crazy idea, but we did a VR, a virtual reality installation.
Right.
So we worked with a London-based VR studio artist. Some of them had worked for Lucasfilm, Star Wars, like really amazing work. And I did a lot of research on VR, and I was just fascinated. So we created this whole environment where people could come. It was like open for a week to the public. Anyone could come in, and the roles were reversed. So you enter this sort of world where you were being looked by the models. I was touching on all these subjects and all these points that had been bothering me, especially because, as we said, it's just fashion, like visuals always very often feels very inaccessible and detached, and I wanted to create something that was both accessible and that could have a life after the show, the fashion show. So
that's beautiful. I think, is it time for questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So anyone have, I feel like I'm going to turn around so I can see everyone. So anyone have any questions? If you don't, I will pick people. I've been told to pick you.
Thank you.
You don't have any.
I have a question.
Yes.
About collaboration, I guess, and like, I think it's interesting working with clothes that they then have these lives that actually live on people and then go out into the world. How do you find that? Do you kind of keep it, like, I don't know, keep a track, do you look at your like hashtags and like be like, oh, okay, who's wearing my clothes? And like, I know that obviously you guys, your clothes get picked by stylists to be in shoots for certain people, some of whom I think are quite iconic. So yeah, how does that feel to have that, like, the main life, I guess, of the clothing, once they leave the catwalk and they go on to people?
I definitely see everything, for sure. I think the most interesting thing is probably like Twitter, what people say, and like their thought process. Like people like, oh, I'm dying to wear this jacket, or like they'll say, or I usually prefer when I see like everyday people wearing the clothes than like of course I love the shoots and stuff like that, but it's interesting because sometimes I think in the early collections I had some pieces that were a little bit complicated in how they actually went on. So they'll put it the wrong way, and then that kind of influence how I would actually do it for the next season. So yeah, I always find that something that I definitely go back to all the time.
yeah, same, to be honest with you. I think the best part is, putting a collection out there, you style it a certain way, you are like, okay, this looks great, and then people buy and you're like, oh wow, I never thought of like, you could wear it that way. Or sometimes we had people like wear tops as skirts, and I was like, yeah, just people, interpret their own, in their own ways, and yeah, that's very exciting. And later on, as you said, it influences how we're like, actually, that was really cool, we never thought of that, how about we, that's a starting point for the next collection.
Thank you. You're smiling really hard, so I'm going to go with you next. Yeah.
So in 10 years' time, where do you see yourself?
Ooh.
Do you have any milestones that you're going to try and hit? or do you feel like you are quite free spirited and you quite like the journey, see where it takes you?
I think the hardest thing in fashion is being able to survive and stay interesting and creative. So I would hope to kind of like get my creativity back and like be able to focus on like the creative direction and the design aspect. So I think like the middle stage is usually like figuring out, having the meetings and like more talking conversations, and then like squeezing in the 10% of design after. But to have that freedom is something that I look forward to.
Yeah, I think likewise, because I think we were talking about it just right now. I think when you're a small brand, startup, sometimes you reach a point where it all becomes management, business, numbers, you know, you've got to, there is a whole creative process, there is a whole research, but really you have to deliver. There are products, there are deadlines, things need to get to shops, buyers. It's a whole thing that I never studied, I was never aware of, that I've kind of had to learn on the go. And it's very often takes over the fun part, which is the creative. So I think for me, 10 years, it's really building a business structure that would allow me and my team to have a bit more time to explore all these other areas and keep creating.
Indeed. Oh, yes, hands up. You can go ahead.
I'm going to be that annoying person and ask about metaverse. So, how do you see yourself included in that space? Was it something?
What space was this?
Metaverse.
How do you see yourself included in that space, considering it's become a topic of discussion?
I feel like I kind of put it at the bottom of my list because I was trying to tackle the sustainability question first. I probably have to figure it out later down the line about the metaverse, but I've asked other people about it, and I think for my brand stage is something that I don't really need to interact with that much, because then I think it will take my design a little bit to another way. But I think, to be fair, there's loads of ways of doing it. I know that people have been involved in like games like Sims and stuff like that. So I think something like that I'll probably be interested in doing one day, but for now, just real world. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very involved in the, well, I wouldn't say the metaverse, but digital, VR, AR. We did this project in 2018, virtual reality, and I think it's incredible. There are just so many doors and so many ways that are interesting to showcase products, but I think what I find really interesting, and it's key, having done a lot of research in VR, AR, and all of that, I think it's the mix of reality and the metaverse, and that's when it becomes more interesting. That's something I'd like to touch a bit more, but it's just so time consuming, and it's processes that take so long to, you know, we did the whole thing, 3D scanning, it's just really time consuming. So it's definitely something I'd like to take more time to develop, to explore. But again, maybe in like a few more years when we have a bigger team and we can have more time to, but yeah, I think it's definitely.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll come to you next.
I think it's really great how you're so kind of driven by your ethos and collaboration as well. And I'm just kind of wondering, what do you value most in that process?
That's a good question.
Yeah. What I value the most, like my ethos or the collaboration?
Just like in the process of collaboration, like what are the kind of things that you value the most when you're kind of reaching out to people and kind of like trying to work and create something together?
I think the end process, or whether I would like it in a year's time, I always think about that part, and whether I can actually like have a long-lasting relationship with that person, because I think that's important, because like you're like, especially like being on like certain sets or have like, it's always down to communication and whether like you actually do naturally vibe with them, because I think that's what helps proved to be the best projects I've worked on. I've definitely had situations where it's not necessarily gone that well in terms of relationship-wise, but of course the outcome was great. But then, like, I have to talk about these things like all the time, so I rather just make sure that it's an important foundation to land on.
Yeah, I think a collaboration for us, it's always open doors to different cultures, just very different reference, and that's always what I cherish most, to have someone that comes from a very different point of view or field that has very different set of ideas or just reference, and that's the most interesting to, to have your work reinterpreted from that point of view. I think that's always a great learning process.
So both of you have different backgrounds, and I would like to know where we can find these backgrounds in your brand. Like is the characteristic that say like, oh, yeah, this is Bianca,
Right.
this is Claudia. So, and another thing is the question is if you could collaborate with one artist, who would be?
Beautiful. That's a good one.
Oh, I think the first. I think the second question.
I was thinking living because you're talking about the past.
I think I'd probably be able to like have a better answer to that question if I thought about it properly. But at the moment, definitely as Devlin, because I would like to do a lot more interactive but larger spatial things. I think I can't wait to do more like physical activations and stuff like that. It's been a while, so to have that like someone that actually fully knows what they're doing and has done like incredible installations and like stages and loads of things like that would be incredible for me. And I definitely want to answer that question again, because I feel like there's a couple of people that I'm probably missing off that I really would like to be a part of that list. What was the first question again?
Like what traits of your heritage, culture you can find in your brand?
So I think it's definitely heavily influenced like by the type of like music that I choose for the show and that sort of stuff. Like either getting like my family involved, like doing like the voiceovers, or down to like the hairstyles and like the shoots. Like how things are styled together is very important. I feel like with like Jamaican culture, like it's always about like looking your best. And there's also like an aspect of like femininity in masculinity in Jamaican culture over there, in terms of like being very well groomed, like your hair's always done, like in terms of like just being very much well presented and that sort of stuff. But it's more down to the masculine attitude, and that's the kind of like the mix that I try to introduce, the in-between with like my clothing.
I think it's a great question. I think it's funny because I don't go like I am Spanish designer. Very often people are like, oh my God, your colors are so Spanish. So I guess that's probably one of the things that bring me back to my heritage, these very vibrant colors, this idea of like the Mediterranean and very bright yellows and greens. And then there's this shape, this concave shape that kind of follows through all the collections, that has influenced not only the shoes that are like a sort of carryover, but the shape of the skirts and the bags. And that's important to me, this idea of really creating a staple shape and signature, and it's something I'm really trying to push. In terms of artists, there are so many. So, I mean, I would love to again do an installation with something like Peter Greenaway would be a great one. I know he's a film director, but I just love The Cook, the Thief, the Wife and His Lover is a big reference for me, so he would be one. I mean, there are so many. I'm like kind of a bit like Linda Venglis would be incredible as well. Yeah, I think if I get a little bit more time, I could think of.
Look out for part
anymore.
2.
Yeah.
Someone else had their hands up. Oh.
I just wanted to ask, as your brand continues to gain traction, it can be really easy to ride the wave and just do whatever industry kind of needs or wants at the time. How do you decide to apply the long-term vision in your opinion?
I think probably trying to follow my intuition a bit more, like whether it actually feels comfortable for me to kind of do those certain moves. But I think like it's been about almost next year will be five years. I think in the beginning stages it was all like the idea of comparison, like was like, oh, maybe I should do this or I should do that, and then I don't know, something of myself just said, just stick to what I'm doing, and so far so good, that's been working. So just remembering that works. But then also I guess like conversations with people as well too, reminding me that because sometimes you need that extra push.
I think again, it's very easy to compare yourself, and the more that you advance and the more you grow, the more voices come from buyers, stylists, PRs, press. Everyone is like, you should do this, you should do that. I think doing you is the thing, and I think if you do you, you stick to your guts, you do something you believe in. In my case, something that I would wear. I'm like, would I wear this? Yes, no. If I wouldn't wear it, we don't design it. Does it exist? Yes. If it exists already, let's not do it. I think it's just very down to that very basic approach, and just really trying to stay focused, because there's just so much to cover when you have a small brand. That focus is really, really important.
Thank you. So in the spirit of signature, I came up with the question now, and I'm literally about to put you on the spot. So for instance, with Reginald's work, I'd say, instinctively, I'd say reds and sort of like browns would be, if you were to paint just one color. If you were to do a collection and you can only choose one color, what color is that? Yeah.
I think probably white.
Okay.
Yeah, I think definitely white. I was like, sometimes it's like when I do like we make everything into, I was like, oh, it looks so good in this color, and then there's like the plain chest of like, oh, you add the wrong color, it could ruin the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, well, that gave me anxiety.
Yeah, I think for sure absent green.
Green?
This kind of absent green.
Cool.
It's just a color that I always gravitate towards, and some of my friends are like, oh my God, that's so you. Or like they will send me pictures of like a car. It's like, oh my God, your color. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's just a color that it's always attracted me, and throughout we've used it, and yeah.
I love it. Did anyone else have a question? Oh, I'm about to pick someone. This is fun.
What's your relationship been with sort of visiting galleries and museums? Is that something that you're sort of very big on? Is that something that's sort of been a recent thing? Or, what's your relationship been with contemporary art, sort of staying in the know of what's happening within your generation? And is that something that's important to you? And if so, how do you sort of fit that in with doing everything that you sort of said you guys are doing throughout this talk?
It's quite interesting because I feel like most of my research comes from like art, or that's like my way of kind of rediscovering my ideas, or giving me time to think about things properly. And I just I kind of like envy artists a little bit, because it's like they get so much more freedom to have the creative side and then focus less on the business aspect of things. And just having the freedom to continuously develop at their own pace. So I always find it fascinating. And yeah, no, I love gallery spaces. And this is such a nice space to even be in as well too. So I was like, oh, when I came in here, I felt like so relieved. But yeah.
you know the answer to that question because I'm the person. You're the person I go to. Yeah, I go to very often, all the time. To galleries. I'm always texting Max. So what's good? It's like, you need to go to Theater Gates. You're gonna love it at Whitechapel. I'm like, okay, that was a great one. Yes. Oh, that was amazing. So yeah, for me, it's always been key to the work, to find inspiration. When I'm stuck, I go back to the library, or I just message Max. And I'm like, okay, what's good? What should I see? Come here. To look at the books, to look at the art. So yeah, it's very important to the process and.
I mean, artists like yourself and designers, you guys are practically healthcare workers because you are in the business of making people feel good in the clothes they wear. Same as artists, like you say, you enter gallery space and you sort of feel at ease because you can just lose yourself in the work. So there isn't much difference in terms of like both practices and worlds. Did anyone else have a question? Oh, at the back, I see you.
Hi there. I wanted to ask, just off the back of that question, there seems to be a clear relationship between art and fashion as well, but also how music affects your creative practice and your process as well, and when that comes in, and then if there's one album that you always go back to when you're feeling blocked or you don't know where to go. What album would that be?
That is beautiful. That is a beautiful question.
Gosh, this is so bad because I just know after because basically because my boyfriend always tells me, oh, you should be a DJ because you always got like the best playlists and stuff like that. But I have like particular songs that I listen to. So like I really like the composition of Umi Says by Mos Def. And there's so many different like layers of like sound in that, and like from that, whatever like comes up next in that like category is what I'm is what I love, and I really like a lot of like 90s hip hop, so like very much anything like J Dilla, those like the sort of sounds that I would listen to like when I'm creating like late at night. And then it kind of varies as well too, so sometimes it can be quite random. But I think probably that, because then when I think about, it's interesting because like when I'm creating the music with the guy I usually work with, so Benny Mills, I like have like a list of songs of like, hey, this needs to sound like this first, and it's like that. Then I like think about how the pace of like how they walk with it as well too. So the music ends up does make a massive influence to actually how the collections are created, which is quite interesting. So then there's always like a playlist for each collection, which is interesting.
Is it something that we can find?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll post it up today.
Look out for it.
I haven't created one recently, but I created one for I think it's AW22, and then I'll make a new one for the last season.
We'll hold you accountable for that. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, music is a big thing for me as well. My father loves jazz, and I've just always grown up listening to his albums. So it could go from like Alice Coltrane to Afro harping, and then I always say that if I was a song, I would be Maria. I forgot now. It's this Iranian. You know the song. We can find it. Check Maria. It's great. It just has this incredible energy to it. So, and then it can get very pop as well.
You can also post this so we can go and find
Yes, it's literally Maria.
Go for it.
I was kind of really interested about your own personal style over the years. So obviously it's something you love your own brands now, but have you got a really interesting story of being young from a kid to this point now? And is there anyone in your life, like your mum, grandparents, or anything like that, your family that really influenced your own personal style?
Beautiful.
it's interesting because I feel like my own personal style doesn't. I think everyday me, yeah, definitely. Like I wear, well, I'm not wearing my clothes right now. I'm wearing my jacket, but you can't see it. It does reflect like the idea of the brand, but at the same time, I feel like it changes a lot. I change my hair like all the time, and that's like I guess that's my personal style. Like it could be one way one day, and then the next is something else. But I think it's just like I don't like the idea of repetition. I always want something new. But I think when it comes to like, the collections, they stay consistent to what they are.
I found it. It's called Maria by Shinzo no Tobira, and it's just amazing. I'll post it later. Yes, I think people that have influence. I mean, I grew up in a big family, South Spain. I have like 12 aunts, 25 uncles. So I had this very eclectic, everyday input, and I think that also shows in the work that we do. So yeah, I would say my family, all the women that I've kind of grow around colors and that very eclectic information around.
Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to thank, wow. I want to thank you, Paula and Bianca, Max for rising up to the challenge, Chloe, the amazing team at Maximilian William, and this beautiful exhibition by Reginald Sylvester II. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Mistura.
Thank you.